sort of Google Map view of the property. Goes all the way from the Manatee Viewing Center to the north. Have any of you ever been there to the Manatee Viewing Center? None of you, and you are students in Tampa. You have a job to do, and while it is still winter, on the coldest day between now and April 15th, you should go there. It's really a really neat kind of wildlife refuge for manatees. I personally, being the fish geek that you heard about, I say it should be renamed the Tarpon Viewing Center because the big tarpon are in there just as much as the manatees. So, but anyway, from the Manatee Viewing Center all the way down to that little 20-acre campus that you see in the red box called the Center for Conservation, it's within that 20-acre square where that partnership between FWC's folks, the Florida Aquarium, and Tampa Electric Company have this kind of unique public-private partnership. Now, if you go from the Manatee Viewing Center all the way down to that red box, it's actually connected now, so that currently it's only open 6 months out of the year to the general public. The idea is that in the future it will become a year-round open site for visitors to come to. This is an example of the boardwalk that goes out to our 50-foot observation tower, but the trails do actually come all the way down to where we are located. So when I was here before, this was a pie-in-the-sky dream, and we were just getting ready to start building a building right here. Now, today, this site, at Manatee Viewing Center up to the north, at Manatee Viewing Center up to the north, here's all these trails, the loop trail. We have a boardwalk trail that goes out to that tower you just saw. Now, right here, this Clean Energy Demonstration Center. This is actually where Tampa Electric Company is going to be working with USF's College of Engineering students. And they're going to have examples, demonstrations around here as examples of wind, renewable energy, solar, renewable energy. I don't know if water is in the mix or not. And they are about to break ground on construction in this area this month. And it should be done in about a year to a year and a half. So examples going in. Across the way here where you see the Big Bend Solar Project, there will also be some other solar panels put in here around the piles. The goal is, I just learned this a couple weeks ago, that eventually our site, this whole Florida Conservation and Technology Center will be 100% powered on clean energy sources. It will be the largest campus in the lower 48 states to be able to say that and show that. So it's kind of cool that we're being involved in such a new up-and-coming thing. Then you come down here. This is where overflow parking is. If you ever go to the Manatee Viewing Center, remember that's a homework assignment. And then down here, go across the creek. There's a really cool bridge here that you can either paddle under on the kayaking trail or walk over as a pedestrian. And now you've come down to the Center for Conservation. This property includes over 500 acres of restored habitat. It used to be broken down, full of debris. You can see these are all tarps left over. It was an abandoned palm tree farm. You can see them in the back. Tampa Electric Company came in starting back in 2007, 2008, and started to clear out this property that they had just purchased with this kind of idea that wouldn't it be cool if we could sort of get this land and start to do something with it. At the same time, the aquarium was looking for some space to put in a place where they could put animals from the actual Tampa, Florida Aquarium, where animals sort of needed a time out, a little bit of time away from public spectators, or maybe time to recover if they were not feeling well. And at the same time, again, FWC needed to relocate their marine fish hatchery from the Port Manatee area. So they all started talking, and one of the board members of the Florida Aquarium approached my supervisor in Tallahassee and said, "Aren't you guys doing some new youth conservation network? This might be a really good place for you to consider putting in a new facility." And so that's how the youth network started to come into these conversations to create this partnership. In the end, you had them, Tico came in, cleared the land, removed all of the non-native and invasive plant species, leveled it all out, started putting in these canals, making kayak trail connections out to the Newman Branch Creek, and now today, this is what you will see. They left some of the old standing oaks there. They replanted in some of the native marsh grasses and some other trees that you would normally have in a restored area of local Florida, native Florida. And it's just now growing back in and filling in nicely. And what you see here is actually a loop that's part of our kayaking trail. and then this trail goes out over that bridge. I told you that will bring you to our campus. Now, when I started work in October 2014, this is what it was. Giant grassy field, and I call it the circus tent. That's where we parked the kayaks. These were bathrooms, and that is how we did educational programs. And then in 2015, finally started construction. Last summer, this is kind of an aerial view of what that red box, remember the red box, the red square, Center for Conservation? This was an aerial photograph taken in June of 2017. It wasn't even last summer, 2 summers ago. Here is the Suncoast Youth Conservation Center, where I currently reside, and this actually has volunteered many, many hours and then worked on her own master's degree project there as well. Big site feature, we have about a 5-acre saltwater pond. Here we have a salt marsh habitat area. The Turtle Care Center is here, Sea Turtle Rehabilitation Center. Some coral greenhouses doing work here. This dirt pile back here is where our new hatchery is going to go. And so we can see we're very much a construction site. Now here, the first phase of this construction was my building. I was lucky, the youth center was the first one built. So you can see the marsh grasses have grown in nicely. This actually serves as a nursery habitat now. So for some of the other Tampa Bay area restoration projects going on in Hillsborough County, Pinellas, Pasco County, Manatee County, they can actually come to this site, harvest the nursery grasses that are growing in Apollo Beach, and then relocate them in these restoration projects throughout our neighborhoods. And then they just grow back in, and so the nursery continues itself. Over here, you can kind of get it. This is sort of a better view now of what that 5-acre saltwater pond looks like. We've got pavilions and the kayaks over here. Now all we have to do is walk right across. The creek comes in right here, and you can just launch and paddle. I was doing that earlier today. I was very wet and muddy. And so we've got a fleet of about 40 kayaks on site. This is so that we can get the youth programs for grades 3 through 12. Can get out and explore what it's like to go through some of the restored areas, but then they actually get out into Newman's Branch Paddling Creek, which is a natural tidal tributary of Tampa Bay. So yeah, they start out in a little bit of a man-made or restored area, but they then get out and get to experience some of the natural Florida that you would have no idea was hidden in our acreage if you were just looking at it from the road. Now I'm going to go through some of the other different types of conservation programs that are working right now, actively ongoing projects at our site. So one of the ones that is those two, this is one of the very first of the coral greenhouses that went onto our site. There are currently 2 in place, and the goal is to actually have eventually 8 of them built out across the way. They kind of snap onto each other like little Lego building blocks. You can tell I work with kids, right? Lego building blocks. But there you can relate as college students, right? Yeah. The stars inside these greenhouses are our little coral polyps and our long-spine sea urchins. So the University of Florida also has a presence at our site. Dr. Josh Patterson is a restoration aquaculture professor who has about 5 active graduate students working from offices based out of Apollo Beach. His students are very focused on the long-spine sea urchin. This is an animal from the reef system, the reef tract system in South Florida that is very declined in total population size. And anybody know why are these guys important? What does the long-spine sea urchin do? Why do we care about the poor little urchin from Florida reefs? Everybody knows? You don't count. You count, but you can't count. Nope. They graze, and they graze on algae. Yay! So these urchins live on the coral reef. They graze the algae that grows on the corals, exposing the corals so that the zooxanthellae inside the coral can see the sunshine, photosynthesize, and produce the food. So they have a very important role in sort of keeping the algae levels down so that the coral can thrive. Well, without the urchins in our Florida reef tract system, the algae is overgrowing a lot of the coral. The coral is having a lot of diseases and problems, and so they're trying to come up with a way to actually produce or use aquaculture systems inside the laboratory to successfully and repeatedly be able to spawn and rear long-spine sea urchins in an effort to put them back out into our reef systems where the numbers have been declining. Now, the coral programs are very much focused with the Florida Aquarium's conservation efforts in Apollo Beach. So this is what the inside of our second greenhouse looks like. They've got these row systems of tanks with all the corals inside of them. And they're focusing on these four, I'm gonna say, yeah, we'll just go with four or five projects. I already told you about the reef. The urchins is project number 5. The 4 that pertain to coral are right here. So one of the things that the Florida Aquarium is working on doing is using genetic rescue and archiving the genotypes of the wild species of coral that are actually out on our reef track system. Now, one of the problems is pillar coral was suffering from this stony coral tissue loss disease. There was a whole reef track area off southeast Florida that was very sick. They went out, they rescued some of those sick corals, brought them back to these greenhouses, and the scientists and researchers and volunteers and whoever else was involved through the various agencies supporting the aquarium, they figured out how to help stop that disease. And in the meantime, they are now archiving the genotypes of those remaining pillar corals. Sadly, the spot from the wild where they harvested and went to rescue these sick pillar corals, they have been wiped out. So the last remaining pillar corals of some of those genotypes are actually in Apollo Beach and no longer in the wild. There's only 60 genotypes of the pillar corals still here. They're also focusing on using coral laurel rearing and growing them out to sizes. So they're actually taking wild spawn from the ocean, bringing them back to the lab and allowing them to settle into that little polyp that you saw on the previous slide. And then once they've grown out, they're going to go and put them back out into the wild. In addition, they're also coming up with aquaculture systems to be able to spawn coral in our greenhouses. They expect that first in-greenhouse spawning to take place this coming August. And then CRF, this is the Coral Restoration Foundation. They're actually located in the Keys, but obviously coral spawning is referring to a sexual reproduction of coral, but with staghorn coral, like you see here in the picture, and the pillar corals, they also can reproduce through fragmentation, so asexual reproduction. So they can actually, the Coral Reef Foundation, in the past projects, they take some of these branching corals and actually break them off or fragment the pieces and attach them to like PVC pipes. They make sort of a tree out of the PVC pipes, tie these little coral fragments on them, hang them out in the ocean, and let the polyps settle there. And then they can take these created nurseries and go place them back out in the reef tracks, roughly speaking. That's my interpretation of it. If you talk to the coral biologists, they're probably just shaking their head at how I tried to explain that to you, but part of what they're doing for coral restoration work. Now up here on the top, that top picture, those are some of the pillar corals that are in the greenhouses right now. We've got 180 different genotype, or different individual pieces of pillar coral in the greenhouses. They're also working on that archiving of 25 other species that are being affected by that same tissue disease. Yeah?
One of our students pointed out in the paper there was a technique where somebody was smashing corals to get more coral to breed by increasing the surface area. Is that relevant to this, breaking up fragments?
I heard about it. I don't know enough about it to speak on it. You hang out with Rachel. Do you know anything?
It is. It's what they're doing at the, they did, I can't remember what it is. Yes and no. There's a positives and negatives of that versus what they're doing. The positive of like breaking it up and doing like that is that it grows fast and you get a lot of pieces really fast, but it's all the exact same genotype. So if a disease hits that genotype, you're wiping out the entire tract. And what the aquarium is doing is that they're doing sexual reproduction, so you're getting different genes mixed in there. So if something does happen to wipe out one, you still have others that could be more resilient.
Yeah, and that's what this is. Those little tags, these little tags that you see are the markings of the different genotypes. So it's sort of like a library of different genotypes. So if a hurricane comes through, wipes out part of our South Florida reef track system, you can still get some genetic diversity by coming back to the animals that we have in these greenhouses to take and put them back out. And then these little guys down here are some of the corals that they've actually been rearing and growing out. They've got 4 different species in the greenhouses, and I was just told that in April, they have about 1,000 or 3,000. They have 3,000 individuals of the 3 species that are going to go back out into the wild as these cute little babies that they should be very proud of. I'm very proud of them, and I had nothing to do with growing these little coral babies, but it's working. So, then the newest facility that just got completed at our site is a sea turtle rehabilitation center, which is this other large blue building across the pond from the Suncoast. This is our boat storage building. Tico built that down there. Never in my entire career have I had covered storage for my boat right next to a boat ramp on saltwater. It is amazing how this partnership works. There are these little perks that you have to really enjoy. So inside the Sea Turtle Rehabilitation Center, they are working to bring in, obviously, diseased turtles. They may have been suffering from boat strikes and inability to dive. So they have some systems inside the tank. There are actually, behind where these people are standing, you can kind of see it here, those little metal pull-down grates. They can go up during the day, so that if a public visitor in the future does come by, you will be able to actually see into the tanks and watch what work is happening on the inside of the Turtle Care Center. On that edge of the building that faces that pond I showed you, there are 3 big windows that look into the exam rooms, research rooms, and then this is our operating room down on the corner. And what makes this particular research or rehabilitation center kind of unique from the sea turtle rehabilitation's point of view is it has this deep diving tank. So if you do have a turtle that's suffering from buoyancy issues, they can actually put the turtle into the tank and make sure the animal has the ability to dive back down and feed properly before releasing them back to the wild after they have recovered. So they currently, I think, have 6 turtles, 5 loggerheads, and a green. Or I might have it backwards. But they just got there about a week and a half ago, and they're still kind of in quarantine, so I haven't seen them yet. But I know they have now moved from their bins into the official tanks. So there is a veterinarian staff and a couple of research biologists who work in that building. Now what you see this is active construction that's happening right now. There is a fishing pier. I call it a fishing pier because that's how I will use it, but it will be a pier that goes out over that pond to give some more overwater coverage for visitors that come to the site or for youth programming. That project alone, just that pier, has been over $650,000 to put in that pier, and that's come a lot of volunteer work, in-kind contractors who are giving their time and materials toward this project, as well as private funding donations that have been made. So that pier has been like its own separate fundraising campaign, just as the greenhouses were separate fundraising campaigns done by the Aquarium. So that other last big dirt pile over in the corner of our 20 acres is going to become a fish hatchery. This is the conceptual design of what it's going to look like. I was told this morning they're about to cut the PO, which means they're going to write the check to the company so they can get started, and then they will have 300 days to get it done. So that check should be cut in about 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm very excited. That means we have the Renewable Energy Demonstration Center to the north, and our Marine Sport Fish Enhancement Center will be starting both this month. So more new things coming and happening and changing every day. The focus of this has pretty much almost always been on redfish. Now this is one of our campers, and that redfish is a fish that he caught while doing a fishing program at our site. That is a real Tampa Bay redfish. We are not stocking, we are not using any enhancement to get fish to come to our site. So if kids are there for a program and they're catching snook, they're catching red drum, this is all Tampa Bay doing her thing. So it's kind of cool, conserving what we have so that we don't have to worry so much. I think conservation and conserving what we have is typically a little easier to do than to try and restore what has already been wiped out. So good things happening at the Conservation Center. Now this map that you're looking at, that we already heard, there's about 350 partners in this youth network around the state. The ones, this is us, the big red star right here in Palo Beach. The FWC, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, Also has another youth center over in the West Palm Beach area and one up here just west of Tallahassee. Ours is all marine science in focus. The West Palm Beach focuses a lot on, whoops, now I did it, on the Everglades. They're right at the headwaters of the Everglades, so she does a lot of freshwater and saltwater stuff just because she's close to the coast. But she's also inside a wildlife management area, so her programming has a lot to do with forests and woods and soils and watersheds. And then up here, they focus very much on freshwater ecosystems. What we do, this just shows our partner growth over the last few years. And as you can see, we started out with some growing pains. Look, we had all these partners joining the network, gung-ho, to come in on this whole teaching conservation education, but we had a whole lot of people waiting. We generated all the interest, but we didn't have the staff, and we didn't have the manpower, and we didn't have the supplies to deliver everything that we told them we would do if they'd come and join this cool network. But as you can see, by 2016, we have straightened that out. Extra folks have been hired, new facilities have been built, more equipment has been purchased, and again, it's like this library loan system. If you would like to offer a kayaking program at this place where you have a pond and you have fishing rods and you can do outdoor conservation education programs on fishing, but wouldn't it be cool to add something? You can just call up your partner coordinator wherever you live in that region of Florida, and you can have those kayaks delivered to your site along with curriculum and lesson plans that you can use on your site for free, just by agreeing to help share the conservation messages that Florida Fish and Wildlife puts out for the general public. It's a pretty good deal. Now at our site, this is our vision that we go by, right? We want to have these sustainable places where youth and families can participate in traditional outdoor activities in hopes that while they're there, we are sneaking into their brains how important outdoors really is, and what they don't know is now we're helping to inspire that lifelong support and stewardship of our natural resources. And it's been working. We have these outdoor conservation education programs for grades 3 through 12. They come, they learn conservation lessons, but within each field trip, there's also time to participate in a recreational activity. You have to remember, I'm wearing the FWC shirt. Florida Fish and Wildlife gets a lot of their revenue to do their work and to pay salaries for people like me by the people who buy their fishing licenses, their hunting licenses, and you can't have those programs if you don't have healthy populations, whether they live in the woods or if they live under the water. And so these are what we do. And we're going to focus at our site in Apollo Beach, we focus on teaching in 3 of the 4 core areas of the youth network. Those core areas are going to be saltwater fishing. Happy fishers here. We do paddle sports is our safe boating. I was happy to say we received a couple of grants this year, and we also got approved by the South Florida Water Management District. Southwest Florida, that's a W, I need to look at it. Southwest Florida Water Management District as an approved field trip location. So we're getting a lot of buy-in, and because the word is starting to spread that we are now up and operational, this is our beginning of our 3rd calendar year where we've been offering programs. Our field trip schedule has actually been filled since about October, and the Florida Aquarium also runs field trip operations out of the Apollo Beach location, but they pretty much focus on 4th and 5th grades in teaching the importance of the watersheds. Whereas our curriculum, you can pick from either that kayaking, fishing, or our wildlife discovery programs. And summer camp. We have a summer day camp program during summers. It's going to focus on one of those 3 things. It's going to be a marine science camp, kayak adventures, or saltwater fishing. Each one has a little bit of the other mixed into it because I can't help it as a science geek myself. We're all going to learn a little bit about the stuff that I really like. And then the other cool thing about our building and the partnership being so centrally located in Florida is that we have a lot of opportunities to also serve the community. So some of the, over there on the right, you see some groups listed where we are supporting other people who are using our site to do their own workshops and their own trainings on their curriculum and conservation education programs that they offer. This one was a project learning tree conference that took place last year, and just last weekend, Swift Muds was out teaching educators in the area how to use the Project WET curriculum, which fits right in with FWC's Project Wild and Project Aquatic curriculum. So if you are interested in some type of maybe informal education in your own career paths into the future, these kinds of workshops are often made available. The curriculum book goes with you at the end, and there's typically no charge other than maybe $5 or $6 to get you lunch. Now at our site, because I call our building sort of the educational hub for our campus, we do have scholarship programs that are available for, this is one that I'm a member of the AFS, which is the American Fisheries Society. They actually offer a paid internship. Did you hear that one? College students, I bet you wish you had that, don't you? A paid 8-week internship where a high school junior or senior is making $4,000 for 8 weeks of work. Amazing money for a child. I don't like last year we had our second Hutton Scholar awarded to us. I have to apply myself as a mentor, and then the students have to apply. It's a competitive award, and it's awarded out of Bethesda, Maryland. It's a national award. So we had Mr. Dante, he was our scholar last summer, and I had to tell him not to tell my summer camp counselors that he was making more money than they were per hour as a high school kid. He knew. He worked with me on that. So before Dante, we had Jordan, who was from up this area, and the site was brand new. She was there in 2016, 2 summers ago. And she came to me because it's a fisheries scholarship, and you or whoever is that intern or that scholar, this is your project. You're going to work with it. It's going to be your idea. We will help mentor you through the process of what to do. But she was like, well, what's out here? If I'm supposed to be studying fish, what's here? And I'm like, you know what? We don't actually know. Because this is a brand new place. We just built and restored that pond. I have no idea even what's swimming in it yet. So she started up a project as a high school intern to monitor the fish communities living in that pond, living in that grassy salt marsh area, and living in that tidal creek where we launch her kayaks. She was there for the summer. Her project got picked up by a master's student from the University of Florida who continued it throughout the rest of the year, and her work just got published in a Restoration Ecology journal. So it's kind of cool that through this partnership, we can even show our bosses and our executive board that our site is not only offering really cool research opportunities for the University of Florida and Florida Aquarium and graduate students, but that even the high school kids who are coming in as part of the educational process can still get involved in relevant current research on these restored habitats and conservation topics. So here's my shameful plug.
Yay.
Da-da-da! I did not know Ashley was going to be here. So, okay, internships. This is one of our high school volunteers from last summer, Sean. And then we do offer internship opportunities at our site. Some can be in education, some can be in conservation, some can be research, just like Jordan's project that got picked up by a graduate student. These are all some of the locations of places where we have had interns, active intern projects from. Actually, I have you quoted next. But I stole it. Oh, where did it go? Must be later. All right, so here's one of the ones that we're working on now. Because I wanted to end on hers because I'm here and it was about here. That's why I did. That's why I changed the order. So, okay, first off, this guy right here, he is a PhD researcher over at the Fish and Wildlife Research Institute in St. Petersburg. And he and I have recently been chatting since we did the community study to look at what juvenile fish are coming into those habitats. I said, hey, why not? Let's take a look at the larval fish recruitment coming into those same 3 habitats at restored sites. So he and I are in the process of using the standardized monitoring units for recruitment of fishes to look at larval recruitment of fishes coming into these restored habitats. We're working on trying to write up a little grant project that hopefully will be about 18 to 24 months in duration. So this is a potential future project. This might be good for a research design student for working on larval fishes. We also have an erosion problem